I called the number I had for him and it went to voicemail, but he called me back and said he forgot, and so he'll join us in 5 minutes.
Oh, good.
So
Okay, well then why don't I play that little blurb?
that would be fine. But I'm thinking that having this kind of expertise available,
Okay, here it goes. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's what they're about.
Actually, we have no choice.
Future's here.
The future is on its way.
Oh, it's in the past in nanoseconds as we live it.
Yep.
Oh, he's not on yet?
Not yet.
You want me to play this video that I've got about the Shell Oil EV?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, I was going to show you one that's titled Futures Literacy, but it's a 2-hour
There he is.
video.
I think he's
Here he is.
Hey,
Hey, hey.
Okay, guys. All right. Do I feel stupid? Yes. Okay. I'm very sorry.
Welcome to the club.
I don't know what happened. I didn't, I don't know. Saturday morning, you know. So I'm sorry about that, but it's good to see you all. Hello, David. Now I have to follow David on his thing, and it's going to be very hard to do because he's done so much, so many good things. So this was going to be just kind of a general review of future studies, but I'd like to start off a little bit less formally and just talk about the field and what we do. And let me begin with a question to you. I gave a talk for program in Brazil this week, and one of the participants there said, what do you think the challenges are of a field that we're in right now? This is the 2020s. I date, well, I actually date thinking about the future, believe it or not, to the 1770s. I'm as much a historian as I am a futurist. I'm not anything professional in history, whatever. But in those days, they were going through enormous change, industrial revolution type, and their lives were changing. And they, for the first time in history, realized that there was such a thing as social change, that their lives were different than their parents and their grandparents, and their children's lives would be different. So some very talented, usually French philosophers around that time, Marcel de Condorcet was one who wrote a few books about, well, this is what the future is going to be like. One of those was a utopia, and one was a more analytical piece about what changes were going on. And of course, we have our friend, not Machiavelli, but Malthus, who was also thinking about the future in England during the same time, late 19th century, saying, yes, but the dynamics of population growth will be no matter how much technology advances and produces more food, we will still outpopulate the world and will always be poor. So there's some very interesting, I mean, that was a truly crucial time. And so that's where I believe the word future came from. There was a future in the previous era, eschatological futures. in particularly the Christian tradition and a little bit in the Jewish and the Greek Islamic traditions. But this is the first time people had to really contend with a world that was going to be different, and they did that. Science fiction came out in the 19th century with Jules Verne and others, some utopias like Looking Backward. And then in the 20th century, we created professional forecasting through the first trend study was done by a sociologist named William Ogburn, commissioned by Herbert Hoover, and actually delivered to Franklin Roosevelt on the trends in the society. Just that. It was the first trends report, about 1929, 1931. Demographics, economics, technology, things like that. And then Harvard, not then, and then in the 20s, actually, Harvard introduced the first strategic planning model. It was called the Harvard model. And it was for businesses largely in the business school to plan their future. So we get that in the 20th century. It was a tremendous advance. Yet it had its difficulties. It was, and I believe the difficulty was more of a, what shall I say, a misimpression of what it could do. It was categorized with other forms of science and other forms of even mathematics to say that sooner or later we will get this. One of my absolute seminal books that I read as a young person was Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, where Hans Selden had created a theory, psychohistory, a theory of how history would go. And anybody who've read that, I don't want to be a spoiler, but it turns out pretty close to what it does after 3 volumes. It was terrific. And so science basically works away at uncertainty and chips away at it slowly, many times, but carefully, deliberately, through experiment and discussion, sometimes, intellectual fights and disputes and whatever. But we get closer and closer, and we have less and less uncertainty in almost every science, until, of course, we get to quantum mechanics, where people have given that up and said, no more there. But in other sciences, so people thought that sooner or later we would get better at forecasting the future. Except what they didn't realize at that time, in my estimation, was that we were dealing with a system that was so complex. And in some ways, it's called, if it were complex adaptive, or indeed chaotic, not in the sense of disorganized, but in the sense of absolutely unpredictable, that we would never get any better at that. And so in the 50s, Herman Kahn, in the 60s, Rachel Carson, Paul Ehrlich, in the 70s, Alvin Toffler, in the 80s, John Nesbitt, in the 90s, Ray Kurzweil, all were talking about futures that were close to what we would have done, but were introducing a new element. And that new element was the element of inherent uncertainty. And the people who do science hate it. People in the university they don't hate it. They certainly don't understand it. And the question, one of the questions I responded to this gentleman in Brazil this week is that in the university, futures is very hard to categorize. Is it a science like meteorology, or indeed David's work in ecology and forestry, biology, or is it one of the liberal arts like history, which is almost kind of scientific, art, music, literature, the liberal arts and the humanities? And frankly, it's both. And that puts a gigantic question mark over the field in terms of not only the university, but popular opinion in general Well, if you can't predict the future using these amazing techniques we have and now AI, what good is it? And that is an interesting question. And in the 2020s, are we on the side of history, or are we a fad that believes that you can get away with not being sure of your answers, not being sure of your techniques, not being sure that you can ever know? No matter how much research we do, no matter how much money is put into this, we can never know the future the way we know the future of even the weather, or certainly astronomy, or biology in many cases. So that's the question I have for you. Is it, are we, or do we have a bright future because of the way we approach things? Or is this challenge to the point where we won't be able to deal with it? So if you would open your mics and reflect on that, are you confident that we are the way to think about the future in the future? Or is this something that is going to pass because we can never get it right? We believe you can never get it right. That's one of our principles. But we need to deal with it anyway. So let me pause for a minute. And I'm going to call on my good friend David Bankston. If I
Oh
can.
dear.
David, you thought about this at least as much, if not more, than I have. So, what do you think? You think we're on the way to the world appreciating and adopting this, or are we kind of a sideshow?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that. But
And we don't know the answer, but it's a good
Yeah.
to me, it's a good idea to discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my perspective would be that in the world that we live in and have always lived in, resilience is really a key. And I think future studies and futures thinking and methods are a way to build resilience at all levels, in individuals who practice those kinds of approaches, for organizations of all types, for governments. Because we can't predict the future, we need to be prepared for a wide range of possible and plausible futures, and be building towards our preferable future. So I think that, and having worked in the environment and natural resources all my career, resilience science is one area that I've dabbled in a bit, and I think future studies is very much in line with that. Because of fundamental uncertainty, building resilience is a key, and futures and its approach has an important piece of that approach.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you, David. That's terrific, and I'm going to come back to you. But let's get to Dean and Carol. Dean, you've been jumping up and down here during this little introduction. What do you think?
Well, yeah, a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's the unpredictability, and I like analogies that a fifth grader can understand. And so when I drive my car down the 805 to go to Costco, I have expectations based on my history of driving down the 805. And now with some help from BMW assisted driving, you always have to guard against the unexpected. Or no, they shouldn't be unexpected. They should be mildly expected, as in this semi may come over into your lane and wipe you out. It happens.
So are we on the road to having that adopted by the rest of society or not?
Well, I think people are doing, what I hear is ordinary common people, of which I am one.
We all are, yeah.
I mean, and yeah, I think they're thinking a lot about it, especially now. But I wanted to go back to something you said, that, and I know about this. Well, it was the Industrial Revolution. Oh, only people thought about the future. Humans have always thought about the future and the past in terms of their children, grandchildren, and yeah, but we need to, of course, have that on a societal level now, right? We have to think about the future of society, of humanity.
Guess what? I actually let me be sure that I understand you. I have a slightly different, of course, um, parents have loved and cared for and worried about their children for all of history. Okay, let's assume that.
Right.
They did not expect them to be different. They expect the world was static. I mean, the king was in the king and God was in his heaven, and the rains would come or they would not come. And I'm a peasant and my children are
Yeah, yeah,
peasants and my
yeah.
so there
I am.
it was not expecting them to be anything different than what
I
I
will.
was.
I'm a serf. I will always be a serf.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've been happy
It
being a
was not what
serf.
we call social change.
Yeah, no, I agree that
Yeah.
social change was something new and unexpected.
Right, right. Good. Dane, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Carol, what would you like to contribute? You're still muted,
Carol, you're
Carol.
muted. Carol, you're
Still
muted.
Merritt. You're still muted. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Yes,
Now you're good. Yeah.
I'd like to kind of throw a spanner in the works.
Please. Oh, I love spanners.
Something I have been noticing recently. And please note that since approximately the age of 12, where I was sitting around waiting for the response to Sputnik. Sputnik went up when I
Yeah.
was
No, I
12.
remember that myself, Carol. Yes.
And I was desperately waiting for us to start catching up. And at that time, through the Weekly Reader, I discovered Robert Heinlein.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And I began reading everything Robert Heinlein had to publish.
Good.
And God, that was a relief. The future was going to get better. The future was going to be a fantastic adventure. And God, I could be part of it.
Yep.
And believe me, the very first Robert Heinlein story I read was called Delilah and the Space Rigger.
I
And
don't
it was
know that one.
it was an incredibly delightful feminist science fiction story.
Oh, terrific. Great.
And that took care of everything for me.
That's terrific.
because
No. And
I
that's
had grown up to age 12 in a world where I was destined to be the ladies' auxiliary to the human race. And I didn't like that.
Okay, no, definitely that.
And
That's
all
not,
of
that
a
wasn't your
sudden, God,
future.
Robert Heinlein was giving me a future where I was part of the human race.
Right.
So that's my background. That's my growing up.
Okay, all right.
Now, on top of that came Sputnik
Okay.
and Why Johnny Can't Read, and the fact that America as a country and the West as a civilization seemed to be falling behind
Okay.
in their movement toward this future that I desperately wanted.
Yeah.
So, as essentially, I wasn't a teenager at age 12, but I was going to be next year. I became a serious futurist and gradually came to divide futurism into two areas, one of which was the obviously predictive, what Harry Seldon was doing in the Asimov series. And one of which was looking at far-flung possibilities, but we didn't know how to get there, but they were possible.
Sure. Yeah. Science fiction.
What these days people are calling black swan events.
Hmm.
And what I have come to see, having firmly settled myself, I mean, for God's sake, I am 81 now. So having firmly settled myself into number one, the predictable future, and number two, the black swan events, for which you need to keep an eye on the possible. Just
Okay,
because
all
of the
right.
black swan events.
We've got a number of people who want to make a contribution, Carol, so let's
Okay.
get to it.
What I have discovered is that we have all along had a great big hole in our obvious prediction area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
my
that great big
question
hole
is,
that I have noticed lately is the population problem.
okay, are we filling that hole with new ways of thinking that will become common and default? Or is this a sideshow that will go away as science begins? And that's to me,
Somehow,
a question.
without a black swan event,
Yeah.
we have gone from an acute overpopulation problem to an acute underpopulation problem.
Okay. All right. So we're getting, then that's a surprising development. It wasn't so surprising, but it is a development. So let me turn to Tom. Tom, I think you were next to make a contribution to this question. Are we on the side of history, or is history going to pass us by?
Let's see, I'm not muted, right? You can hear me?
No, you're fine. Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, about a year and a half ago, I gave a presentation on cliodynamics.
Yeah, all right. I'm familiar with that.
Peter Turchin. And
Yeah.
basically, the study of history, trying to turn it into, instead of a social science, a hard science.
Yeah. Okay.
So he developed he studied a number of databases of historical data of how various large groups like nations and so forth have fared, Sachat and Chia and a number of others databases, and put them into a mathematical structure which is supposed to account for a number of, I don't know how many things of factors, cultural evolution, macro sociology, mathematical mining, and complex systems analysis, and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is
that the future you think will become the default way of approaching the future?
Well, I think we need more than that, but I think it's a good start trying to actually make this into something that can mathematically be worked with.
Okay, and we did that in economics and with econometrics and demographic forecasting and things like that. But what you just set aside, we need more than that. What's the more?
Well, the cliodynamics looks at things from mostly social perspective.
Sure.
It's really not intended to be predictive, but the
Really?
effect is
I thought
that
it was.
The effect is that, well, it was to model other past societies.
Okay.
The modeling became so good that he figured if we apply it like to the United States, maybe we can see what it would be like in 20, 30 years.
Okay.
And actually, he did kind of predict that this decade we're going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, well, a lot of people were doing that. Great, Tom. No, that's I think a real significant advance in what Carol called the predictive part of. I mean, you do models basically to see to the extent that the model is going to remain accurate into the future, then you will be able to predict. And that was what the advance in the 20th century was. But it's that other part. It needs more than that. So thank you very much. Stan, let me turn to you. What do you think? Were we on the side of history, or is this going to be a sideshow?
One of the more important things that I learned as a philosophy student when I was studying some Freud is that there was this concept called the ego ideal, which is
Okay,
what you aspire to.
interesting.
And the thing that Freud liked to bring up, which I find to be helpful when I look at the social and the anthropological side of this question, is the tendency towards ambivalence in the thinking that humans have in their social relationships. And by ambivalence, I mean a love-hate relationship that you have. Sometimes you like your dad, sometimes you don't like your dad. Sometimes you like your mom, sometimes you don't like your mom.
Yeah.
Same with the sisters and brothers. Everybody essentially can be done this way. And if you look at the media and how they basically, if they want to sell you, they show you your good sides. And if they want you to not be sold or to kind of smear you, they look at your bad sides. And they have all of their photography and all their quotes and all that kind of thing. And so if you're looking at the future as a commodity that's trying to be sold on the market, it's got to be sometimes you can say the word propaganda. You've got to be able to say these are the bright sides and these are the dark sides and so forth, which is kind of led me to the point of view about where we are with AI. I never see a discussion of AI that doesn't give you the ambivalent reply.
I love that. I love that term. Yeah, that's great. That and
It's
the way
going to
I
be a salvation or it's going to be a doomsday machine.
yeah, the way I say it is that every truth is a partial truth. And there is usually another side to the story, and we can talk about where that comes from epistemologically. I'm a philosophy major myself, so I put
The
a lot of
double-edged sword, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay, I think next is David Grider, please. You're
I was
next.
just going to mention the limits to growth.
Can't
Sure.
hear you, David.
Can you turn up the volume?
Maybe.
Okay. That's okay. We can listen carefully. It would be in the audio settings down to the bottom left of your screen.
Did that make any difference, or was I
No,
on?
not
No,
much.
that's about the same.
Do you see audio settings at the bottom? There's a little up arrow and click audio settings, and there you can.
It's even more complicated because I'm using Linux.
Yes,
Oh,
but
all right. Okay. Well, there you
that
see, you're one of
sentence
the
was
big brain
quite,
people.
When
that
you-
last sentence was quite intelligible.
No
So
problem.
speak
Go
at
ahead.
that volume
Go ahead,
slowly.
David. We'll listen.
Yeah. I was just thinking back to the limits to growth
Sure.
book.
Yeah, right.
So there are some limits we're not going to be able to get around.
Yep. Yes.
Even though, yeah, and quantum mechanics, as far as we understand it at the moment, that's the way the world is. And so
Yeah.
to the extent that our study of the future could be mathematical, but the fact that the mathematics agrees with the way the world is a benefit, is a perhaps not expected
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. I'm glad we could hear you there. H. Tom, yes, sir. Fire away.
Oh, the future. We are very, very, very bad at futuring.
Okay. All right.
Way back when. I'm not sure when this was. Social Security was invented. And they went to a bunch of mathematicians, I suppose, and asked them about what do we need for a social security number? And they talked about this and consulted and whatever, and they said the social security number should be between 12 and 16 digits. And the politicians thought that was too hard to remember, and so they made it 9 digits. As a result, now, if you just make a random 9, if you take and make 3 random 9-digit numbers, one of those is probably a valid social security number.
Do you know how many social security numbers have been issued by now?
I don't know how many have been issued, no, but just from the population size,
Well,
since
that's obviously the population size. Yeah.
everyone has one.
Yeah, right.
We've
Well, with
we've
9
already
digits,
used up a third of that space.
with 9 digits, you get 10 to the 9th possibilities.
Yeah.
10 to the 6th is, I think, a million, and 10 to the 9th is a billion. So we have a U.S. population since the 1930s is clearly north of 500 million. So we may actually be getting close. I didn't understand this before, Tom. Thank you very much.
Real quick, I believe we are recycling them.
Are they recycling?
I believe we, like Wordle words, we are recycling them now.
I didn't know that. Okay, good.
And they want to make sure that nobody is getting screwed over by taking away their benefits.
That's appreciated. Okay, so the question is our approach to the, okay, go ahead, Tom. Go ahead, please.
But do this for the planet.
Yeah.
How do we identify people? I mean, we could tattoo a 20-digit number down your arm, but where?
That has unfortunate precedents.
Yes, it does.
Our social security
and that's part of the reason I bring it. That's part of the reason I mention it.
Yeah. Use a face mask, Tom.
It was not intended to be a national ID.
No, it was not. It was not. But the same group of mathematicians came out and said, presumably the same group, that numbers for bank accounts like Visa cards should be 20 digits. But again, that was expensive, so they went to 16.
Okay, so how does this relate to our question? The question is
we don't fit into our world. We can't imagine our world.
No, my point is futurists do not, at the 2020s, but are we on the side of history? You know, and I'm not asking for a prediction. No. I'm asking for the question, are we approaching the future in a way that our grandchildren, when they go to school, will learn about the future the way we think about it versus the way our fathers and grandfathers thought about it in the 20th century? That, to me, is an interesting question, and it's not a prediction. I'm not saying one or the other, but are we moving to appreciate the inherent uncertainty of rapid change in a world that we can describe in very great detail, to the point where we have to say, yes, Carol's view of predictive futures and econometrics and market forecasts and market research and all of that stuff is useful, but incomplete. And what will the rest? Right now, that's not a common view. I can tell you from the university point of view, David, you've been in universities a lot yourself. It's not a common view. And to give up on the search for certainty is somehow it is countercultural. It is a challenge to the university mindset and to the professional mindset of the world. We should get this right. And we've gotten so much else right. I mean, even discovering that quantum mechanics is completely random is a advance forward. I mean, and through all that research. And so they don't want to give up on the enterprise to say, and they see us as giving up on the 2 century, 3 century search for certainty as the most important thing. And we're the ones who are saying, no, that's impossible. It's a waste of time, and we should settle with good, good mathematical forecasts, but not take them as the future. And that kind of is where I think we are. Let me go back to Tom Walsh. Let's see his contribution here.
Yeah, I think we were making progress. I think in the last, I don't know, decade or so, we've gone kind of backwards in this country, at least. They're doing much better in Finland and elsewhere.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to say is that it slipped my mind right now. So, yeah.
Okay, good. We'll get back to you. You'll still be here. Dean, go ahead. You're next.
I'll circle to David Greider.
Okay. Okay.
His hand down.
David, you want to comment?
I had something, but it slipped my mind.
All right.
So we need somebody who's young in this group who can remind us what we wanted to say.
Well, I'm less than 80. How about that? Yeah.
Well, you're just a kid.
I've just caught a cog on my six speed.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think Dave Bergstrom will relate to this. See, we look at this as though human beings are the only living thing on the planet when it comes to discussing that, and they are not to me. And we are dependent in so many ways on nature and plants and fungi and stuff that we haven't begun to learn about.
Right.
And so, to me, the only rational future is one that takes into account environmental consequences.
Of course, absolutely,
because they will come back and bite us in the tail end. Yep.
Okay, good, Dean. Thank you very much. I want to. Okay, Tom. Tom Walsh. You remembered what you were going to say.
What we've been doing is looking at the future in certain ways, but I think we do need to get beyond what we've been doing. The World Future Society, for example, has become basically a commercial enterprise. It's not
Well, it
really,
doesn't exist. It
it's
doesn't
not
exist
really
anymore.
developing future techniques or anything like that.
Yeah.
As far as I know. So we do need to, there's a lot of progress that I think could still be made in this field.
Right. Let me return to Dave Bankston, if Dave, you'll let me pick up on your theme of resilience. I agree that resilience is a goal. In a world of unexpected change, being resilient is an absolute necessity. Of course, our university, the university that created the first degree in future studies in Houston, was next to the Johnson Space Center. So I use astronaut training a lot. Astronauts and pilots and other people, police officers, soldiers, all need to be resilient because I don't know. I have a slide that has two quotes on it. One from a Prussian general who said, "No plan lasts after the contact with the enemy." And Mike Tyson, who said that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Resilience is absolutely necessary in dangerous occupations. And one could argue that as we get into the 21st century, things are becoming even more dangerous socially and in macro, society. So David, expand on the outcome of resilience. How does thinking of alternative futures, how does and draw the specific line to a person who had never heard of this stuff, how does the way we approach the future using alternatives and believing that uncertainty is unsolvable is a way to increase resilience? It's not a hard question, but I'd really love to comment on it.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've just been reading, I don't know if you've read Jane McGonigal's book, Imaginable.
No, I've heard about a lot about it. No, I haven't read
It's
it.
it's a good book,
Yeah.
and I finished reading it, and I'm taking notes on it because there's a
Yeah.
lot of good
I should
stuff
get
in
it.
there.
I should get it,
But
definitely.
yeah, and you can find a used copy online. But
Yeah, right.
she really drives home the point that we can't. She's not the only person to have said this or thought this, but that we can't if we can't imagine a future, we can't prepare for a future that we can't imagine.
Right.
Hence the title of her book, Imaginable. And so by thinking about these alternative futures that are possible, maybe plausible, maybe wild card futures like a global pandemic. Maybe by thinking about those in advance, something happens in our brains that we're better able to deal with them. We're able to prepare more quickly. We're able to not panic when they arise,
Yeah.
if they arise. And so that, to me, that's really a key benefit of futures thinking, is that by thinking the unthinkable,
Yeah.
and by thinking the unimaginable,
Mhm.
by thinking the ridiculous, like Jim Dator's second law of futures, any useful future should at first be seem
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
By doing all that, we are better prepared for whatever unfolds in
Wow.
this very unpredictable world that we're in.
That's excellent, David. No, I really appreciate it. What I think of, I think I would amend her or your characterization that we have to imagine it to prepare for it. And what I say is that the alternative futures, the uncertainty that we embrace, is not specific to the scenarios that we do. We're not preparing for scenario 1 through 7. We're developing a habit of mind that we do not know. And then again, that's a challenge to the scientific establishment. We are preparing a habit of mind of the future that in many ways, I wish future studies were in the liberal arts as much as in the business school, as much as in engineering and economics. That this is inherently human, requiring assumptions, imagination, speculation to do it well. And it requires mathematics and econometrics and mathematical models also to do it well, both. And this idea that there are multiple answers to the simple questions is that's to me a revolutionary thought, because having thought about education a lot, being an educator all my life, one thing I tell people is that the education establishment has tricked you. And they've tricked you to believe that every question has an answer, one, and every problem has a solution, one.
Right.
And the reason and how they did that was by picking the questions and the answers while we were in school to have simple answers so that they could grade us on a test. I mean, it really came down to easier to teach, easier to grade, and therefore, so you get out of school and you run into questions. Well, wait a minute now. It's both. It's not, every truth is a partial truth. There's other things that are true at the same time that seem to be apparently uncontradictory, and yet they're both true to some extent at the same time. We in school, if I am crazy about one thing, is that we are never in school allowed to use our judgment, never allowed to make a decision in the face of uncertainty. All the decisions are right or wrong. All the decisions are either the right answer or the wrong answer. And we come out of that with a culture. I'm talking about a culture now. And the global culture, the scientific culture, modern society is addicted to certainty, believes that certainty is possible in every single way. And in that sense, I think I argue very strongly that if that turns out to be challenged, not wrong, but challenged, and it becomes both, that there are certain things and there are uncertain things, and that we know the difference and we use those both to prepare for the future, we will be better off. So I'm answering my own question. I am optimistic that we have the mindset. It's not tools so much, the mindset to say both of these things are true simultaneously. And we should. So I appreciate your connect, and that is, and once you have that mindset, you are more prepared, not just for the futures that you can imagine. We're even prepared for futures that we can't imagine because we go, oh my gosh, here's a worldwide pandemic. Yeah, some people have talked about that, but I've never thought about it seriously. And then we're resilient and being able to do it. Okay, let me go to Stan. Stan, yes, sir.
Well, you've just brought some things up that I really wanted to get into, but Jane McGonigal, because I taught in the video gaming industry for a while. Jane McGonigal was very strong. Almost every independent game development association I ever went to, out in San Jose or Moscone or whatever, was the gal that was always the scholar of games.
She's an icon in that field. Absolutely.
And I've seen her speak on several occasions.
Yeah.
She was very good at trying to make gaming. I mean, there's a lot of criticism of the gaming industry, especially more on the World of Warcraft and Call of Duty side, where there's a lot of shoot 'em up violence and so forth. And the idea that you can imagine a world and make it reality in a virtual game is something that the gaming industry has done for quite a long while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
And I've seen good and bad about that. But the other thing I wanted to mention, have you ever heard of a fellow by the name of Nate Hagens?
No.
Well, he's from Minneapolis. He's from the Minnesota area.
Yeah.
And his discussion about the future, which I would recommend that you maybe check him out. I think David Greiter would like this as well, is that he is able to pull together an environmental component to the economy and how that has to be a all-inclusive discussion.
Right. Oh,
because
absolutely.
the idea of unlimited growth in a limited resource world is obviously, there's an irony, there's a paradox. Those were the two words that came to mind when you were describing some of the ambivalence of what to use my word from before. And I don't think that there's much of anything that you can say without having some kind of a counter argument to it.
Yes. Right.
And we as futurists, even on this screen, do that on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And being somebody, I know everybody's going to go, Stan's going to talk about his dad again, but being a preacher's kid, and I know what it's like to be in that other environment where everybody is on the same sheet of music, they're on the same sheet of gospel, they're on the same sheet of Psalms or whatever, that is well, we've talked a lot about it in this particular meeting, is that was the goal of education. To become better soldiers is what education was about in the earliest years of education. But then it became more of making you a better worker, and that was what education was designed to do. And
still is, unfortunately, I think mostly.
Yeah. And I think that to be able to be a critical thinker, I'm kind of enjoying the fact that maybe now with my philosophy degree, I might actually have some value in this AI-oriented world where you're not even being paid to program anymore. All the new AIs are being programmed by the older versions of AI. And it's all about neural networks. It's all about training the training.
Stan, I have to tell you that none other an authority than The Economist magazine, just in the current issue, said that philosophers are being hired by AI companies to understand thought and to understand reasoning. And so you're exactly right. Maybe you go work for an AI company, Stan. Maybe that's your future. Speaking of the
Peter,
imaginable. Yeah,
I
David.
just posted that link to the Economist article in the
Yeah, it's
chat.
terrific. It's a terrific article. Stan, I was not a preacher's kid, but I was a Catholic seminarian. And
Okay.
in the Catholic seminary, the Baltimore Catechism was even more important than the Bible, I have to tell you. So I come out of a world of intense certainty and have challenged that and moved away from that a lot. But thanks for the link, David. It's an interesting article, and philosophy graduates are being hired by these companies.
It's dogma. That's what
Yeah, great. No, it's true. And then we're trying to get away from that. Carol, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Good. I think what is behind what you are talking about here is creating better channels of communication between the recognizers of black swans and the academy.
Yep. No, sure. Exactly.
And the absolutely classic example of this happened during the Manhattan Project, where, oh God, and I forget the fellow's name, but he was a nephew of Lisa Meitner and literally could have been, up for being killed for talking to somebody about his research.
Sure. Yeah.
But he basically wrote, Dear Auntie, we are at something of a standstill on our efforts to create the bomb.
Yeah.
And here's what's going on. And we got all these contaminants. And Dear Auntie wrote back, Dear Dummkopf nephew, those contaminants are it was krypton and something else, are the breakdown products of U-235. You have solved your problem. All you need to do is increase the neutron capture cross-section. Now, literally, the guy could have gone to his death for writing to Auntie, and she for writing back to him. But it helped quite a bit with the problem.
That's great. That's a great story, Carol. Thank you very much. Good. Appreciate it. A lot of new ideas come from surprising places. Dean, we're looking at your Lufthansa picture.
Yeah, and with life for a minute. Anybody else wants to put their hand in, please circle back.
Okay, the other unfortunate bit that I didn't remember is that I only have about 5 or 10 minutes left because I have something else to do this morning. But hi, Tom, you wanted to make a comment.
Oh, this reminds me of walking into my philosophy class one day at university and discovering that the tables had been pushed against the walls and the chairs were sitting in a circle. And the instructor insisted that we should sit on the chairs in the circle rather than at our customary tables. And it was one of the strangest classes I ever had.
I love it. I love it.
Because people, you had somebody different to talk to.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was, you were seeing people's faces, not the backs of their heads. It was just.
I have a similar story in my
just
own
weird.
In my own teaching career. I was teaching social problems and sociology before I was a futurist, and I was at the Georgia Southern, now University, Georgia Southern College, in a very long, narrow classroom with about 50 students, undergraduates, sociology students. And I was writing statistics on the board about population and poverty and those kinds of things. And I looked out over this group of students and realized that they didn't want to be there. They were there because Daddy told them to be there and paid for it. Mm-hmm. And I realized, and then I thought to myself, hell, I don't want to be here either. I was just, regurgitating all kinds of crap. I came away saying, learning is fundamentally about a relationship, not a transmission of facts and figures. And to implement that, the next time I walked into a new classroom, which was the next semester, it was a smaller classroom, I had nothing in my hands. If you're a teacher, you should try that. It does exactly what you mentioned about changing the chairs. I was exposed. I sat at the edge of the desk and I said, "What do y'all want to learn? What's this about? What are we doing here?" And boy, they thought I was crazier than a loon. Oh my God, this is going to be awful. This guy's off his rocker. We're going to tell the dean he's crazy. And the class more or less went the way a normal class. I didn't have the creativity to make a whole lot of difference, but boy, that felt strange. And the same kind of thing. So putting ourselves into, and this is another thing I think in David's defense here, another of building resilience is to imagine living in alternative futures. Very simple, but I'm not stuck in the present. There will be change. And most importantly, I'm not stuck in the expected future. I'm not stuck in where we're headed. We are headed there. No doubt about that. Data, we've got the trends, we've got the data, we've got the mathematics, we've got the models, the blah, 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 blah. But there are alternatives as well. So that as a mental exercise, and again, back to astronaut training, not just how to run the space station and how to do the experiments that they're tasked to do, but what happens when it doesn't work as expected. And they build a sense of resilience and are happy about that. I comment oftentimes when I'm giving a speech that the astronauts never came back from a mission in which everything went as expected and said, well, all that training we did about the, what if this happens and what if that happens was a gigantic waste of time. No, they didn't say that. They said, I am happy to have had that training just in case. And we don't have that mindset in macro planning, in forecasting. We don't have, we think it's a waste of time. I mean, if you start on what if in a professional meeting these days, everybody goes, oh, here we go again. Analysis, the paralysis of analysis. And are we going to talk about this forever and all this stuff? Now, it's possible that it can be overdone. But the fact that it's done to any extent whatsoever, I certainly hope and I believe we are on the side of history. So 2 more, Dean, and then unfortunately, I have to leave you wonderful people. Please tell me.
Yeah, real quick, Stan hit a hot button. I heard him utter the phrase critical thinking.
Yes.
I haven't heard that since coding was invented, right? Critical thinking is what we were teaching, after I got out of, but yeah. And then suddenly it was, oh, no, it's coding, it's coding, it's coding.
Well, I have to challenge, I don't know who said that, Dean. I had a workshop with teachers in Houston a long time ago. It was too big. There were 90 or 100 teachers in the room. And I said, how many of you want your students to be critical thinkers? Hands all over the place, 80%. How many actually have a lesson on critical thinking? 3. Yep. So it's one of those things that everybody wants and nobody does.
It was a buzzword. We talked about it, and now they don't even bother.
Yeah, right. And so I want you to, put it in the portrait of the graduate, but oh no, we're going to continue to pursue the questions and the answers that are the right and wrong answers in these classes so that I can teach it easily and grade it easily. So yep. Critical thinking, I don't think we're teaching that. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Teaching critical thinking it should be paramount in education.
Yeah. All right. Good. Excellent. So what did you want to contribute?
When I was on the local school board, a director on the school board, one of the books that we kind of tried to bring into the curriculum was Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you just happened to mention that word just recently.
No, mindset is extremely important. Really what we're talking about, not so much techniques and methods, but how to think about how to embrace uncertainty.
Right.
Embracing certainty when it's there or close to it, embracing uncertainty when it's there. And the point is that it's always there. Both are always there. There are ways of knowing. And there are ways of embracing uncertainty. And we're the kind of people who say it's not either one or the other. It is both. So yeah, it is a mindset. I love the term, Tom. Thank you very much. Okay, Carol, and then Stan, and then I really do have to go. My wife is waiting for me to go. Stan.
Well,
Carol.
I would suggest as an exercise
Sure.
that everybody look very carefully at how the population problem went from a curve with a very positive first derivative
Yeah.
to a curve with a very negative first derivative
Yeah.
without anybody noticing.
I would not say not anybody, but it certainly wasn't common knowledge that there would be a peak population.
Well, without anybody noticing until the very negative first derivative was
Well,
there.
many of us were talking about it quite some time ago, that as the growth rate began, not was still positive, but it was slowing. So there would come a time of a peak, because mathematically that's what would happen. So in fact, even limits to growth, I think, had, I don't know if it had a peak population, but whatever. Okay, Stan, and then Dean, and then I do have to go. Stan, go ahead.
Well, you said mindset, and I immediately thought about the fact that one of the challenges to education, and I taught for a long time, is that not only do you add information to someone's head,
Right.
you have to kind of take the information that they've got in that spot and move it out so they can take in a newer, refined, or a different idea.
Yeah.
In other words, it's kind of like giving themselves permission, if they want to discard something they didn't like before and to replace it with something they like that is new or better.
Yeah.
Or if they're really clinging tenaciously to that idea, being given the explanation for why it's not particularly good idea.
Right.
Getting, I think that Derek Mueller, who has a program called Veritasium on YouTube and on physics and things like that, describes how removing misinformation is the first challenge to bringing in the good stuff.
Yeah, no, that relates to a principle of change that I teach about when I teach about change, which unfortunately is not taught very much in schools, and that is that the iron rule is, in order to create change, you have to destroy something. It's not just a question of physics and finding space. New ideas, one will have to some extent challenge or give up existing ideas. You want a new kitchen, you got to bust up the countertops. You can't put the new kitchen on top of the old. So there is a process, and people don't like to give up. Who does? I don't like to give up. I don't like to give up the familiar, the known. This is the way it's always been. But it is an absolute requirement of change, and new change of ideas is that we at least challenge. We don't throw them away, but we say, that's nice. That's probably true to some extent, but this other thing is also true to some extent. And that by itself is a way of making room for new ideas. Okay, Dean, you're last.
Yeah, real quick. You caused this, by the way. When you said
my fault. Okay, guilty as charged.
You said that nobody noticed population. Well, worldwide, yeah, we were not there. Within certain industrialized, wealthy countries like Japan, where they had very low birth rates, no immigration, suddenly the seniors, the boomers, said, "Hey, who's going to pay for our retirement? You guys are going to have to pay 40% of everything you make to support your grandparents."
William Gibson's comment that the future has already arrived is just unevenly distributed.
Perfect.
All right, guys, this has been, frankly, I had a PowerPoint prepared. That would have been very boring, and I have learned a lot. I hope this has been exciting for you. You're obviously still got, another 30 minutes or so on your call. I apologize that I have to go, but
that's okay.
And okay, David, I promise if you have me back, I will be prepared next time, and we'll have a very long and boring PowerPoint so that I can feel like I've done my duty of creating a learning experience for you all. This one I hope you'll remember. If I ever come back and do that, I don't think you will remember that.
Are there
Please,
are there
please come back even if you don't do a presentation.
Okay, Tom,
are
thank you.
there any particular videos on the website that we should look at right now? On the Teach the Future website?
You know, I don't know the Teach the Future website as much as I should. I'm not managing the company anymore, so I'm the chair of the board, which means that I'm generally clueless about what they're doing. But let me put that question to the people who do know, and I'll send out a list of those to you. I'll send it to David Grider, and you'll have them. Okay?
Thank you.
Great, absolutely.
Thank
Thank you. It's been a wonderful
Thank you.
conversation. Appreciate it. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Very good.
Because
Very,
he's not here doesn't mean we have to stop the conversation.
Yay.
Dave Bergson just had his hand up, but maybe that was
Oh,
OG.
I was applauding Peter.
Oh,
it's
then
Bank-
your applaud
Bankston, there's
turned
no
into
harm.
a hand. I know that's the way it works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was really interesting and a good way that Peter approached this. I think he's a natural teacher and a really one of the great teachers of future studies in the world, really. So I would love to see the quote boring PowerPoint that he put together for today's session and didn't use. Maybe he could
Yes.
send that to us.
Yeah, if you can distribute that, David Grider, I will look at it. Yeah.
Now, David, you're the guy who put up the Nesbit,
Yeah. Yeah, I have that book. I've read it. It's a good one, and it's kind of the same idea that we need a different mindset to approach the future than we generally have, and that was one of Peter Bishop's main points here today, I guess. Also, I in the chat I mentioned that game designer and futurist Jane McGonigal has this 5-course specialization in futures thinking on Coursera, which I didn't put a link in for it, but I took those 5
Yes.
courses.
I took
And it
notes
was-
on that one as something to do.
Yeah, it's really great. And she teaches most of it. She has some other people from the Institute for the Future, which is where she's based, teach some of the sessions, and it's well worth doing. It's based on a course or a series of courses that she teaches at Stanford through their continuing education, I think it is.
Where's the lively discussion we normally have at 10 o'clock or noon? Yeah.
Well, cogitating.
I think our minds are kind of minus.
You know, something that if people are interested, one of these weeks, it would be not in the near future, but I really was impressed with this book by Jane McGonigal called Imaginable. And do you ever have sessions that are like basically a book report summarizing the main points and content of the book and reflecting on it a bit? Would that be something that
Yes, we do that occasionally.
yeah.
My next presentation is going to be basically a book report on function.
That's the name of the book?
Yep.
Who's that by?
Oh, you would ask me, of course. Just a sec.
I'm just curious.
Well,
That's okay. Yeah.
Actually, David, that's a very good sign
No, it's not.
that you are in love with the book, but you don't know much about the author.
I know enough about the author to be dangerous.
No, but
He teaches longevity and geriatrics, and his courses go out to 50 colleges across the country these days.
Oh.
But the book is basically I'm not quite sure when it's going to happen, but sometime in the next month, I'm suspecting. I'll tell you all about it.
Yes, we are looking forward
He
to it.
basically says there are 5 categories for health, and it's not your strengths that maintain your health span. It's paying attention to your weaknesses. Because if any of those 5 areas of functionality fail, then you need to be taken care of. And so it's like with all the muscles, it's either use it or lose it. And so if you pay attention to the things you're not good at, often you can extend your functionality, your health span, with relatively minimal cost and effort compared to not paying attention. But I had a question for H-Town. Are you going to be doing next week's presentation for us? Or should I reschedule figure to be here and do function?
I sent Stan a note this morning about doing a presentation about something, and I've forgotten what it is already.
Is that the 4th of July?
Yeah.
The return of COBOL kind of thing.
Yeah. The return of COBOL.
Hey,
The return of COBOL.
I'd like to hear about the return of Fortran.
Fortran
if
never
I
left.
recall, COBOL was the very first higher level language, mostly by Grace Hopper.
Yeah.
I have a 14-minute video set up right now from Miguel from Anthropic describing some of the new ripples going on with AI, which I think is well.
I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
And she's kind of leaning towards that philosophical side of things that I was describing earlier. So I'm going to get this thing going right now. Share sound. And
Yeah, I did a presentation
We're
just
done
a
with
few weeks ago about that, but there's a lot that's really been happening in the last month.
Work at Anthropic.
Tom.
Yeah, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on her last point there about training. That makes a huge difference. Just I don't know, a few weeks ago, last month, there was an experiment run on many of the different systems, Anthropics and XAI and Google and all those things, where the system was set the task of governing a small society. What happened, I know that Anthropics grew and succeeded and turned out to be very successful. XAI's was destroyed within 4 days, totally obliterated. And the main difference, they say, is what those systems trained on. Basically, XAI's AI is trained on direct from the internet, all sorts of stuff. And that makes a big difference. Exactly what she was just saying.
I would say that morality and ethics is the one branch of philosophy that has the most meaning in today's world. I don't think that most of us think a lot about epistemology or aesthetics or metaphysics, or a lot of branches of philosophy don't really matter that much. But I think ethics is the one thing that is still the most relevant branch in philosophical inquiry. The challenge is that even when I was studying it, there was no such thing as a normative morality. You could study a group of behaviors and you could study a moral construct of a certain culture, and you can contrast it with another culture and another culture. But there wasn't any, and I do remember that this gal, she made a big difference between saying shouldn't and couldn't. She used the two terms. She used that the AI couldn't do something. She didn't use the word shouldn't do something, which gets into an ought not. David Hume, a philosopher from the Kantian time, I think he was stated that there is no such thing as ought, or you can't make an absolute point to an absolute oughtness. Carol.
Yes, I immediately, after she described what she was talking about, thought, do I want the Pope with his attitudes toward contraception, abortion, and population control, and thinking I'm a murderer? Do I really want the Pope giving advice?
There you go. Ambivalence.
Yep.
And
Doesn't sound very ambivalent.
Yeah, when you're a one-issue person, you see everything through that lens.
Yeah.
Would you repeat the first couple words of that sentence?
When,
I got you see
when
everything
the
through that lens.
Carol, and this is not a put down. Your whole lens of observing the world is through a feminist lens, and I understand that. We all have our lenses, but I mean, yeah, it is ambivalence. Yeah, I don't really care what the Pope has to say, but he has what he says affects billions of people and the way they think. And so you're gonna say, okay, because the Catholic Church, blah 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 blah, then they have nothing to contribute to the world. They're evil. They're Adolf Hitler. You see what I mean? I mean, that's just too simplistic.
Well, I didn't precisely say that. I said, do I want? Which is slightly different from their Hitler.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I get that. And I have the same ambivalence, but but I'm not as I'm more forgiving of what I think are stupid ideas if you occasionally have some good ones, right? Or some good thoughts or whatever.
Sounds right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put my hand up and I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
Well, let me say this. I was told, and I think most rest of you in the military know this, the higher the rank, the narrower the mind. Why?
Not necessarily.
Well, but that's kind of the constraint that happens because you're more responsible.
That's the stereotype.
I mean, there are some brilliant generals, first sergeants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But you're responsible for a higher rank, higher number of people. Whereas when it's like any politician, when you're in a small group, you can chat all you want to, but when the cameras are rolling and it's going to go out for broadcast, all of a sudden there's a different editor working in your brain.
You're just saying that a general has a political animal, and yes, in many ways, of course, he is.
No, it's more complicated. It's
Yeah, but I think, for instance,
the general's thinking is constrained by the colonels thinkings beneath him, who are giving him information and reacting to what he says. And their thinking, in turn, is constrained by the majors below the colonels. So
But
the general is at the top of the pyramid, but the top of the pyramid can't shake off its dust and walk off, because then it would no longer be the pyramid, the top of the pyramid.
to
He's
give a
trapped there.
counterexample, Eisenhower, when he was president, and presumably top of the local pyramid,
No,
well,
different pyramid.
Eisenhower was
He's on
offered
top
the
of top.
nomination from both the Republican and the Democratic Party.
Yes,
So he
but
was
he's on
perhaps more
different.
top of the pyramid than most presidents.
Yes, but it's a different pyramid.
Managed to give us a very cogent description of what he called the
Mhm.
military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I would hold that up as a counterexample to narrowness of thinking.
I'm inclined to think he's the exception that proves the rule.
And actually, that's a mistranslation. It was the exception that tests the rule. Sorry.
That's okay, but Ike, because of World War II and all that, yeah, he was kind of outside those expectations. He could kind of do and
Yes.
say what he
As I
believed.
said, he was offered the nomination by both parties.
He had earned that right in our minds.
He also gave us the interstate highway
Yeah.
system,
For better, for worse.
which I was very impressed by, because he desperately wanted to move military material from one end of the continent to the other.
Yeah, but you realize, I mean, he was a futurist, wasn't he? Right? I mean,
I think so.
he was warning about, if we keep up this World War II mentality where war is good, invest your son, this might not be a good way to think about the world and the country. And then he also
Well,
thought we need to
and I
move.
think particularly the linkage of the military-industrial complex, the fact that they have an impetus to make themselves bigger and hope for the next war.
Everything that's the way the world is. You get richer, you get bigger. I mean, whether you're military, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but
The real need for the highway in his mind was so that we are better prepared for World War III, just in case, and all that. That was a lot of it, but I think he saw the economic consequences of that. Although you could argue that that same money put in the railroads, and we'd have 300-mile-an-hour trains here in this country, but it wasn't.
I'll never forget, I was in my 20s as a college student visiting my uncle who flew B-24 Liberators during the Second World War. And they were just getting in Rapid City some interstates built finally. And he said, it's about time. Hell, I was bombing these things back in Germany during the Second World War.
Yeah. Where's our Autobahn? Finally, yeah.
Yeah. He had kind of an
Yeah.
interesting sense of humor about things like that.
Part of the rationale behind the interstate highway system was to provide emergency runways for aircraft. But
It's
Well, that would
coming.
work.
Yeah. I want to blame Eisenhower for paving the roads into Yellowstone, but he didn't really do that. That was done before his time.
You know the spot where 35W goes north, right past the airport? And the big planes look like they're going to land on top of you instead of making
Yep.
it over the fence.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of think of him then.
Well, it's natural that every major city on the planet has large freeways near large airports. So yeah, you're going to get planes flying around large highways and roads.
Well, and it's somewhat natural that I think in these terms because I was growing up in the Eisenhower era. I mean, I can remember, I think I was 4 when Eisenhower got into office the second time. And my mother was constantly listening to the radio, mostly, on the subject of politics. And I said something to some relative of ours about not being able to talk now because they're about to put the oath in office.
I was actually 5, I think, right? 52, 56.
What was that?
I was 5, 52, right? And then 56 and 60 was Kennedy. So, yeah, born in 47, I would have been 5. You would have been at least 5. Yeah, at
Well,
least.
I was born in 45. You can work it backwards.
Well, in 52, you were 7 or thereabouts. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were in elementary school.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time home with my mother listening to the radio.
Right. Yeah, I
We
keep
didn't have a
fairly
television at
political
that point.
family.
I think the only people on the East Coast did.
Yeah, we listened to conventions on the radio and all that kind of stuff. I was exposed to it, politics.
And a lot of shows where you used your imagination.